Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the Marvel Legends Xemnu Build-A-Figure wave of supervillains Dormammu. This is basically retro classic, whatever you're gonna call it, vintage Dormammu. And there's a lot of things really nice about this figure. There are definitely a few things that blow big chunks, but there's a lot to like. I think most of you are gonna enjoy this figure, though I do think you should stick around because some of the things may be a deal breaker for you. So there's a little bit to talk about, so I think we should go ahead and get him off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands just about, let's say, 6.5 to the top of his head. Of course, the fire is higher, closer to 7. And that's going to make him roughly, let's say, 16.5 and then 18. And that's a pretty good size. We've seen a lot of these parts before. There are, of course, some new ones, as you might be able to tell the character-specific details. But most of this is reused stuff, so that's fine. That's reasonable. Reusing parts is a necessity, and it's fine as long as you do get the new parts when you can. And that's pretty good. Before we get into the review though, let's go ahead and do a question of the day. Super simple question. Which of the versions of Dormammu is your favorite? I personally happen to like the Build-A-Figure one. Was it a Build-A-Figure or was it just an SDCC? Whatever, the big one with the more armory look and the skirt pieces. That's my favorite look. You guys can let me know which one you prefer. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the aesthetic on this guy. Most of the figure is your standard matte PVC looking plastic. Nothing too glossy, nothing too matte. It's just pretty average, which is good. This is especially glossy, which is fine. I think that was probably intentional. I do wish that they would have matched the spiking around his arms and legs to go with that. Would have looked really sharp. I think if they just added a little bit of gloss paint on there, would have set this thing off. There's no shading anywhere. In fact, there's no paint anywhere as far as I can tell, except for the head, which is definitely a bummer because it looks very plasticky. Granted, the composition of the molded parts is enough that it doesn't stand out as being terrible. Like, we have the different tones for the arms, legs, belt. It's spread out enough, but it is entirely solid plastic. No paint except for the face. That's a bit of a bummer. Now, speaking of the face, they did make this piece a separate piece, which is reasonable because that's how you probably would have to do it in order for it to look good. I don't know why they made it come out so easily. Is there a version where he doesn't have this? Am I remembering something incorrectly? I thought with this outfit he always had the little antler thingy going around there. So that's a bit weird. Not a big deal, but it's worth noting that because it's removable in the way it pegs in, it doesn't stick, like it doesn't wrap around his head as much. It sits kind of forward on him, and it's a total pain in the butt to get it to go back in sometimes. I think maybe I've gotten the knack for it. But see how it sticks forward? I don't care for that. In my experience, or in my recollection, this should be way farther back and like wrapping around and kind of engulfed in the fire a little bit. But whatever. Okay, now here's the thing that really grinds my gears about this guy. They did a really good job with the sculpt. I think it's appropriate for the character, but he's always drawn with like hot white or hot yellow white facial, like his eyes and mouth poking through the mask, if you want to call it that. And then the flame is usually brighter also, like not just those three bits, but also like closer to his head, and then it turns orange. On this guy, it's almost impossible to see his eyes, and his mouth is dark as well. It all just blends together, and it really ruins the look of the figure. Even if they did it the way they did it, but just threw a little bit of yellow, like bright yellow, almost white, or white paint on those three parts, it would have made it pop so nicely. But as it is, you can barely see his face. The fire is too close in saturation and darkness that nothing really stands out. The fire is really nicely sculpted. It does fade from yellow to orange, which is the way it should be. It just needs to be way brighter, way more yellow. And that would have been difficult with the translucent plastic. I get that, but they can definitely do it. We've seen brighter yellow plastics. We've seen that. It can be done. They just chose the wrong colors, and it makes the figure not look as good. So that's a bummer. Other thing is a bummer is that his wrists are incredibly skinny. Super skinny wrists, and that would be better to not have. Otherwise, it looks okay for what it is. So for the aesthetic standpoint, the face is definitely weird. That knocks it down a lot because the face is kind of important. So I'm going to go a super generous 7 out of 10 for the aesthetic. Now, as far as accessories go, we do get the 2 trigger finger hands which come on him in the package. If anybody can explain to me why he comes with 2 trigger finger hands, you will do me a great service, because I have no idea why Dormammu would hold guns. Makes no sense to me. We do also get 2 fist hands, which are good enough to use, and then 2 effect part holding hands. That would be great to have. I like that we got those. However, the 2 effect parts we got are just these 2 little fire swirls. And again, to my recollection, he should have like some magic poofs in his hands, not just some fire swirls to go on his arms. This figure of this character seems to be significantly lacking in creativity and problem solving. It's almost like they just took parts that they already had and said, that's close enough to a thing, and we'll use it. Doesn't really make sense to me. Any of the decisions they did don't really make sense to me. So accessory-wise, I'm only going to go 6 out of 10. Why do we have gun holding hands? If I'm wrong about that, fine. But also, why do we have just a couple fire swirls? He's not known for being engulfed in fire as his attribute. Like, that's a thing, but also he should have something in his hands. I believe it's even on the box art. Let me see. Yes. Look, oh, perfect example. You can see the face. Look how bright yellow that is. The face is kind of like engulfed in it. These wrap around his head. You can see the white, hot eyes and mouth. And then his hands, he's got the magic in his hand. He's not just swirling fire around. It doesn't make sense. I don't get it. It's weird. Like, they provide us the reference material for what they've done wrong. I don't get it. Whatever. Okay, accessories, 6 out of 10. Moving forward. Articulation on this guy, nothing too crazy. I'll pop it off to show you. We have a double ball peg at the top, which is pretty good, and we have another ball peg at the neck. That's really the ideal combination. That gives you 3 total ball pegs. One is in the neck, of course, so that's just for like adjustments and more natural posing. That's awesome. And then the double ball peg in the neck is great because that gives you the most versatility in posing. However, they did it the wrong way. They made a really big ball peg at the top and a tiny one in the neck. You don't want that. You need most of the motion to be at the bottom of that double ball peg. So the neck should have a really big one. That will give you a lot more range. And then a little one goes in the bottom of the head at the top here. That should be a little one. And that's just for adjustments. Because as it is, it's fine. And with the fire, it doesn't really matter, I suppose. But it still goes to show they could have done it the right way still, and they didn't. They need to reverse this. That's like Articulation 101. Flip the ball pegs around. Big peg handles the majority of the motion. Little peg handles adjustments. I mean, everybody knows that, right? Okay. Shoulders. Standard shoulders. It feels like they're on a ball peg almost, but there's no range, so I think it's just a little bit sloppy. But you do get your full rotation, of course, not counting this, which is soft, so that's good. Of course, you get your horizontal motion. It's a little tight, but it works perfectly horizontal. Bicep swivel is fine. Double jointed elbows, a little chunky. Very chunky, but it works just fine. That's all right. Wrists obviously have a swivel. The gun holding hands have the vertical hinge, which is nice. The other hands all have standard horizontal hinges. That's reasonable. Ab crunch is pretty basic. I guess they did that for aesthetics. It works well enough. He leans forward a little bit. He leans back a little bit. You can definitely squeeze a lot more out of that. They seem to have an issue understanding radiuses and how joints should move. I'm not saying that in like a sarcastic, snarky way. I just mean like a lot of the joints could work so much better if they employed the right ideas behind the engineering. I don't understand it. It's very strange. That's all. Okay, for the hips, you can bring the leg all the way forward, horizontal. It does kick out to the side a little bit. That's fine. That's for the aesthetic when it's down. That's reasonable. Bringing the leg back doesn't go anywhere at all. Out to the side, almost all the way out. That's really nice. We are very loose in the hips. Not floppy loose, but definitely, like if it gets warm enough in your room, he could take a shelf dive because his legs are going to do the splits and knock him over. So be aware, at least for mine, it's very loose. Thighs have a swivel. That's fine. Double jointed knee. Bottom joint doesn't want to go. Oh, let's try this one. All right, so it's a very chunky double jointed knee, but it gives you perfectly good range, so that's fine. You have an ankle rock, or I mean a boot swivel, which is good, but I don't know if you noticed as I was bending this leg. The boots pop off very easily. That's not necessarily a problem, because if you just don't do it, it won't happen. But it is something that's happened to me twice now as I was trying to free up a stuck joint. One time it almost popped off, as you just saw, and the other time it actually did pop off. They pop right back on, but it's somewhat risky because it's a small peg, so just be careful of that. The ankles go, you can see every time you even move the ankle, it separates. Just be careful. It goes all the way back, that's fine. And going forward, you get plenty of range, that's good. Ankle rocker is perfectly reasonable, so that is fine. Articulation on this guy is not bad. The neck, I don't think it would have really mattered. That was more just an objective observation about the execution of the joint. And ab crunch is, whatever. Everything else worked pretty well, so I guess 7 out of 10 Marvel Legends. Nothing special here at all, but it does work, so that's fine. Alright, so final verdict on this guy. Is it a decent enough Dormammu of this retro design? Yeah, I think so. I don't think many people are going to mind the flaws, and I think he's going to mostly just be standing there, probably holding another energy effect from a different figure so that he looks cool. Because the swooshies just don't do it, the little fire swooshes. Can't see many people posing him holding guns. This guy's not exactly known for shooting people, at least not to my knowledge. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But it'll definitely fill the spot. There's nothing terribly wrong with it. It just could be a whole lot better at no cost to Hasbro, so I don't understand why it's not. So my final verdict on this guy is going to be a simple 7 out of 10. If you ignore the fact that it's the first good retro Dormammu figure, like kind of ever, good in some way, it doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't do anything for probably anybody. It's not impressive. It's just acceptable, and it fills the spot well enough. That's the way I look at it. So if you're interested in getting it, I think you probably won't be too disappointed, but you're not going to be thrown back or anything like that. It'll be like, okay, I own this now. What's next? That's about it. Alright guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. And if you haven't subscribed, you might want to. I have new videos almost every single day, and thousands already on the channel. So make sure you come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.